So we're on the subject here of in 1 Kings chapter 3, and the story of Solomon in a court case. And he is about at this point to settle a bitter argument between two prostitutes. And both of them, of course, are fighting over the same child. How would you settle an argument like this? There's no witnesses around. Absolutely none. Two women are in the same house. One child has died, has been laid on by its original mother. The other child has been stolen by the mother, by the one mother, and taken for her own. And the other dead child has been put by the mother, who is really not the mother of that child. How would you settle a court case like that? How would you know what is the truth? Wouldn't it be a rather difficult thing to have to settle? It's no wonder they said, you've got to have the wisdom of Solomon. I know that today many judges are sensitive to what goes on. But man, think of what a good job could be done. Even more so if some of the judges here were filled with the Spirit of God and could exercise these gifts of the Spirit. We might come to some faster agreements instead of going on to some long, long, drawn-out court cases. Well, I just threw that in for free, too. Here we find now that these two women have come before Solomon, and Solomon has decided now to settle this story. He's tried to settle the issue. He's obviously, they're not going to get anywhere because both of them are fighting over the same child. So who's going to get the child? And now when Solomon calls for the sword, and he says, I'm going to settle this, bring me the sword and bring me that child, and we're going to slice it in half. I am sure that at that point, everyone in the courtroom must have thought, oh no, oh no. He's going to be just like his father David. Chop, chop, bring the sword. Every time David spoke, bring the sword. Now the one woman jumped up and she said, no, no, don't you touch that child. Don't you dare touch that child. You lay a hand on that child. Oh, she says, no, no. And she threw herself over the child so that Solomon couldn't touch the child with the sword. And one of the people who were in the courtroom grabs the woman and pulls her away from the child. Has to be wrenched away. And the other woman said, sure, go ahead. Chop, slice, go ahead. I don't care. Solomon said, give to the proper mother her child. The woman who tried to protect it is the true mother of the child. And the other woman is not the true mother. Now you say, well, I could have figured that one out. Could you really? Would you have decided on such a course of action? To me, it was a rather unusual thing that would take place, wouldn't it? A very unusual thing that would take place. And this gift of the word of wisdom was something that apparently made great fame for Solomon, because it says, and all Israel heard of the judgment which the king had judged, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do judgment. Well, I wish I had the wisdom of Solomon. I really would love to have the wisdom of Solomon. But I know one thing. We have the gifts of the Spirit. We have the gift of the word of wisdom. And I believe it's the same God, right? So I believe that we can come into circumstances where we're going to need to exercise the gifts in just such manners. Let's turn, please, to Matthew chapter 22. And we'll see something here in the life and ministry of Jesus Christ. I love to watch this man in action. He has got to be, oh, I love it. Verse 15. Then went the Pharisees and took counsel how they might entangle him in his talk. And they sent out unto him their disciples with the Herodians, saying, Master, we know that you are true, and that you teach the way of God in truth, Neither do you care for any man, for you regard not the person of men. Tell us, therefore, what do you think? Now listen to the oily, slippery slime coming off of their lips. Come on. You'd think that they've come to ask Jesus a normal, everyday question. We know that you're true. We know that you teach the way of God in truth. And they're buttering him up, just giving him the real old 1, 2, 3. And we know that, you don't care for any particular person. You don't take sides or anything like that. But tell us, what do you think? Is it lawful to give tribute to Caesar or not? Now note the gift of the word of knowledge here. The word of knowledge is, and Jesus perceived their wickedness. I said that the gift of the word of knowledge is there to help you so that you're not tripped up, right? So that you won't be taken unawares. So Jesus perceived their wickedness. Then he said unto them, well, he says, I'm sorry, I wouldn't want to offend any of you in any way. I just must be very careful here. You know what he said? He said, why are you tempting me, you bunch of hypocrites? Jesus talking like this? This nice, mild-mannered creature? I don't think Christians are supposed to be the type of people that are just supposed to be walked on all the time, It's one thing to turn the other cheek, and I believe in turning the other cheek. But occasionally, when you turn the other cheek, in which case Jesus did oftentimes, there was teeth in it. Particularly when it came to the hypocrites. Then he said, show me the tribute money. And they brought unto him a penny. And he said unto them, now whose is this image and superscription? And they say unto him, Caesar's. And then he said unto them, well, all right then, render unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. And they marveled at him. How come he had spoken so wisely? Do you have any idea what kind of a spot Jesus was in at this point? Do you have any idea? Do you know that they literally had his back up against the wall? Oh, I love to watch the wisdom of Jesus. If he were to uphold the paying of the tribute to Rome, his ministry, of course, would be a thing of the past. The people would turn against him. They would have grounds for laying charges against him before the religious court of Israel. Now, if he were to take the stand against the paying of the tribute, they would accuse him before the Roman authorities. In which case, the prosecution could easily be pressed on charges of teaching insurrection, rebellion, and treason against the state. So the very soldiers, the Roman soldiers then, who were on guard duty in the temple at that point, would have arrested him right there, Johnny, on the spot. You see, either way, whatever way he'd answer, they'd grab him. Now, by the operation of this beautiful gift of the word of wisdom, he foiled their plot. He not only received a word of knowledge as to the wickedness that they were thinking and what they were about to do to him, but by the gift of the word of wisdom, he knew what to do about the situation once he knew the facts. And boy, did he just did a beautiful job on that very, very delicate situation. There is a scripture, you know, that says, he that digs a pit shall fall therein. And I believe by the exercise of the gifts of the Spirit, we can prevent ourselves from falling in a lot of different pits that we don't have to fall in. How about Matthew chapter 21? And we'll see this one as well in operation in the life and ministry of Jesus. And we will look at verse 23, When he was come into the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came unto him as he was teaching, and said, By what authority do you do these things? And who gave you this authority? And Jesus answered and said unto them, I also will ask you just one thing. And he says, if you tell me what I want to know, then he says, I'll be more than happy to answer your question for you. He says, the baptism of John, tell me, did it come from heaven or from men? And he watched them there for a while. And they went and reasoned with themselves, saying, now, if we say that he's from heaven, he will say to us, then why didn't you believe John? But if we say, well, if the baptism is from men, we fear the people because they hold John as a prophet. Well, I don't know. We just don't know what to answer him. So they went back to him and said, Jesus, we can't tell you. We just can't tell you what the answer is. And Jesus said unto them, well, sorry about that, boys, but I can't give you the answer to your question either. Because they wanted to know by what authority he was doing all these miracles of healing and ministering the way he was. Believe me, I've had a number of people come and want to know by what authority I lay hands on people and minister to them. Oh, you have no idea the number of questions that I get asked. Who gave you the authority? I remember being abroad in one given place. What had been happening, of course, was something that was most unusual, and that God was moving in such a spectacular way. I can appreciate the fact that when you go into different countries or into different places, people need to know your background. It doesn't hurt at all for them to know which church you belong to. We have to be careful about ministries. I mean, you can't just let somebody come in and blow a ministry for you. So the people in this particular city had never heard about me before at all. Never heard about me, and I hadn't put out any shingle and said, look, I want to come to your city and into your churches to minister in your churches. I had never done this and still have never done it. It's always come by way of an invitation of someone who has asked me to come. However, because we had already now been ministering in the upcountry in that place, in a number of different towns and cities, and God had moved in such a powerful way, and we had witnessed so many miracle signs and wonders that I had never seen before under my own hands. And now we'd come to our last place, and of course, in order to minister in that city via way of some of the people that we knew, and they had requested that I have the possibility of coming into that assembly to minister, they had to get permission of the leaders of the renewal in that city. Well, they'd never heard of me. I mean, I was a Mary who? Never heard of the woman. Maybe what we ought to do is meet her first and find out what kind of a person she is, and if indeed we can allow her to come into our pulpits. Again, I say I appreciate the fact that people need to be screened once in a while if they're unknown. So the woman said to me, she says, well, Mary, do you mind, going before these people and they'll ask you questions, and tell them about yourself, and because they'd like to know, more about you, whether you're qualified. She says, will it make you nervous? I said, no, I don't care. So we got to the meeting. There must have been about 40 people there, very, very important leaders. And they had a short business meeting, and then the main chairman said, now, Mary, I wonder if you would tell us just a little bit about yourself. Strange how the Lord gives us a word right at the time. It was as if I had nothing to prove, nothing, absolutely nothing. I began with the simplest of statements. Well, I was born and raised on the farm. I grew up, I got married, I had 3 children. I received the fullness of the Spirit at such and such a time. I've gone to a number of places and received Bible school instruction. I entered into the things of God and out into full-time ministry. I've only had a grade 12 education. I came out here to this country and up country. I know that you've heard some reports of what God has been doing, but I have nothing to explain it. Nothing. I have nothing to account for it. I don't even know how to describe to you what's happened because I can't even describe it myself. I said, I know I'm an unknown person. What God is doing has sort of blown my own mind. I have no way of explaining it. And other than that, I said, I really don't have much more to tell you. I'm not a theologian. I'm not an ordained minister. I went on to tell him everything I wasn't. Well, you see, there happened to be a few sharp theologians in that meeting that I think were about ready to, if I were to give some theological discourse of all my beliefs, I would have no doubt run into some very, very grave problems because I felt like there were some that were ready to sharpen some swords with me. Well, I mean, if we've got a character who is a nobody, and she's got not that much education, and she's just an ordinary gal who's come from the farm, she can't be much of a threat to us. You see, the desire of my heart was not to try to prove any points. I wasn't trying to put anybody down. The only thing I wanted them to see was that what God was doing was something that He was doing, and it had nothing to do with my abilities or my inabilities. It was something God was doing. And I wanted God to touch them the same way that I had seen God moving elsewhere. So they decided, well, I guess if this gal can't do any harm, and really, I am sure that it was the word of wisdom that was used at that given point to explain that. And they opened up the meeting then for me to come and minister on a Friday night. The person who was with me at this time, traveling with me, I looked over at her and I said to them, I says, well, you see, what they wanted was just to have their ordinary people coming to the meeting, just those who were in the renewal. And he said, we won't announce it anywhere. We won't do anything to make a production out of it at all. And he says, we'll just have our few people. And I said, where are you planning on holding the meeting? Well, just downstairs in the basement. I said, well, I would like to make a suggestion that if indeed God is going to move here the same way He has as He's been moving up country, I would suggest that you probably prepare for a few more seating arrangement then. Well, we really don't feel that it's necessary. I think this would probably accommodate okay. So I looked over at this woman that was with me and winked, and she looked back at me and she winked, because we knew very well that we never had to do any advertising. When God was moving, and we believed He was going to move the same way, that by the time they announced it to their assembly, that the news was going to travel so fast that there wouldn't be enough place to accommodate. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. We came into the meeting that night, and the place was so full. You see, they hadn't expected so many people to come out either. But news travels very fast when God begins to move. So this gift of the word of wisdom, of course, is something then that we can recognize as something that may get us out of a situation where we've got our back against the wall. And again, Jesus never sought to try to prove things to a lot of people, other than the fact that He wanted truth to be made manifest, right? He wanted to know truth, and truth is the thing that we're after. Though I know that we can carry around our little bag of truth with us and whomp people over the head with it, and there's no love either. This gift of the word of wisdom, to know what to do about a situation once you know the facts. The wisest course of action. To be able to use the best means to attain the best ends. Now, in natural circumstances, the use of the best means to attain the best ends is oftentimes applying the Board of Education at the seat of knowledge. And that's just natural understanding. but the word of wisdom is that which is humanly impossible to know. Will you come back and join us next time when we're going to share some more on the gifts of the Spirit?